There's a human population alive today that may have remained genetically isolated for over 50,000 years, and every outsider who tried to reach them brought death. In 1880, a British colonial officer named Maurice Vidal Portman sailed to an island in the Bay of Bengal called North Sentinel Island. He arrived with armed officers, captured 6 people, an elderly couple and 4 children, and brought them back to Port Blair for study. The 2 adults died almost immediately. The children were returned to the island carrying foreign diseases in their lungs, and Portman's expedition was officially recorded as a scientific success. That alone would make this one of the darkest colonial stories ever documented. But it gets stranger, because North Sentinel Island is still there, and the people living on it are still there too. When helicopters fly over the island today, the Sentinel emerge from the trees and fire arrows at them, not warning shots. Real arrows tipped with sharpened iron recovered from shipwrecks trapped in the reefs surrounding the island. In 2006, 2 fishermen drifted too close to shore after falling asleep in their boat. Their bodies were later found buried in the sand up to their necks. The world usually frames this as the story of a violent, hostile tribe. And honestly, I understand why. In 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow illegally traveled to the island after bribing local fishermen to take him there. He believed he could convert the Sentinel to Christianity. He was killed almost immediately. The story exploded across global media. The journal entries, the Bible pierced by arrows, the final messages he left behind describing the islanders as people trapped by Satan. It sounded like the ending of a horror film. But that surface-level story hides something much bigger, because the people living on North Sentinel Island may carry one of the most ancient and genetically unique human lineages on Earth. And the more scientists learned about the Andaman Islands, the more disturbing the history around them became. So let's actually go through this carefully. North Sentinel Island is part of the Andaman Islands, a chain of islands stretching through the eastern Bay of Bengal. Researchers believe these islands have been inhabited for at least 50,000 years. Some estimates go even earlier. To understand how ancient that is, you have to picture the world at the time. Agriculture didn't exist. No pyramids, no cities, no written language. Modern humans had only recently begun migrating out of Africa. Europe still belonged to the Neanderthals. The people moving through the Andaman Islands weren't following civilizations. They existed before civilization. Researchers believe these early humans followed coastlines eastward in what's called the Southern Coastal Migration, one of the earliest movements of modern humans across the planet. And some of those people stayed in the Andamans, some stayed on North Sentinel Island. Then something extraordinary happened. The island's geography isolated them almost completely from the outside world. Dense jungle, shallow reefs, dangerous waters, almost impossible landings. For thousands of years, the separation held, and that matters because scientists studying other Andamanese groups, the Jarawa, the Ongje, and the Great Andamanese, discovered genetic patterns unlike almost anything else on Earth. No direct DNA has ever been taken from the Sentinel themselves, and after everything you're about to hear, that fact becomes extremely important. The Andamanese genome appears to trace back to one of the earliest branches of the human family tree, a lineage that split from the ancestors of most modern populations tens of thousands of years ago, and then remained remarkably isolated. When geneticists compared Andamanese DNA to ancient populations across the Indo-Pacific, they found connections, stretching all the way to Papua New Guinea and Aboriginal Australia. The same ancient migration, the same deep ancestral roots. A genetic thread left behind from one of humanity's earliest journeys across Earth. And the Sentinel may represent what that lineage looks like when it was never fully absorbed by later migrations. never overwritten, never replaced. That's not just scientifically important, it's a living record of human prehistory, and it has survived on a 60 square kilometer island surrounded by arrows. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the strangest parts of human history, subscribe, because this story gets even darker. I want to go back to Maurice Portman for a second, because the true horror of North Sentinel Island doesn't come from the Sentinel. It comes from what happened to every Andamanese group that outsiders successfully contacted when the British established Port Blair as a penal colony in 1858. The great Andamanese population numbered in the thousands. By 1901, there were around 600 left. By 1969, only 59 remained. Today, fewer than 100 survive. Disease, forced relocation, cultural collapse, dependency, all introduced by people claiming they were bringing civilization and help. The Yonge population collapsed in similar ways. The Jarawa resisted contact for decades, but after outside interaction increased in the 1990s, researchers documented disease outbreaks, dependency on outside food, and exploitation by tourists. In 2012, video emerged showing Jarawa women being forced to dance for tourists in exchange for food while officials stood nearby. That happened inside a protected reserve, and this is where the story becomes morally uncomfortable. Because many of the people responsible genuinely believed they were helping. Portman believed his captives would benefit from Port Blair. Missionaries believed they were saving souls. Government officials believed integration would protect isolated tribes from extinction. But every single time outsiders imposed contact, the consequences were carried almost entirely by the Andamanese themselves. And meanwhile, the Sentinel never changed their position. Stay away. Generation after generation, they defended that choice. And there's one thought I can't stop coming back to. The reason the Sentinel remains scientifically extraordinary is because they refused contact. The arrows preserve the DNA, their hostility preserved the archive, and that completely changes the ethical questions surrounding them, because the argument for scientific access collapses under its own logic. You cannot claim their genetic uniqueness is the reason to disturb them when that uniqueness only survived because they successfully resisted disturbance in the first place. That is the lesson history keeps repeating. The Sentinel are not isolated because history forgot them. They are isolated because they chose to be, and they have defended that choice for longer than agriculture has existed. Before we finish, I want to know where you stand on this. Should humanity ever attempt peaceful contact again, or should North Sentinel remain permanently untouched? Drop your thoughts below, because I honestly don't think this has an easy answer. But here's where I keep landing. The Sentinel have survived on that island for somewhere between 50 and 60,000 years. Before empires, before religion as we know it, before any nation on Earth existed, every empire that entered those waters eventually disappeared. The British Empire is gone. The penal colony where Portman's captives died is now a tourist site. The missionaries came and vanished. The researchers came and left. The governments changed. The world modernized. The Sentinel remained. Still fishing the reefs. Still emerging from the jungle with bows in their hands. Still doing what they've done for longer than recorded history itself. And maybe the strangest part of all this is that the most complete living trace of one of humanity's earliest migrations may exist on the only island that has never truly been contacted.